This is one of most BNSF's deadliest head-ons of all time. But how did this all occur? This is the story of the 2015 Roswell train collision 8 years later. On the early morning of April 28, 2015, a crew from the Southwestern Railroad, which consisted of an engineer and a conductor, were about to park their train in the east end of Chisholm Siding. The crew had been on duty since last night, delivering and picking up cars from industry. The train consisted of 2 locomotives leading and 21 freight cars. The leader of this train was CEFX SD40M-2 3124 leading, and trailing right behind it was Union Pacific SD50 9851, which the locomotive was built for the Denver and Rio Grande Western. The conductor, who was in a highway vehicle, used his cell phone to call the train dispatcher and release a track warrant. The dispatcher asked if the switches line on the main track weren't. The conductor responded that yes, he got it right. Later, during the response to release the track warrant, the conductor said, "Report clear and clear, all switches line for normal main line." The train dispatcher time-stamped his conversation completed at 4:40 a.m. However, the conductor had not lined a switch on the main track. On the same line was southbound train designated as MCLOCRIL-27A, which was coming from Clovis, New Mexico, with its final destination of Carlsbad, New Mexico. The train consisted of 9 engines leading and 79 freight cars filled with sand. The leader of this train was Ferromex SD70 4072, another Ferromex SD70 4070, Ferromex ES44AC 4682, BNSF-944CW 1077, BNSF-944CW 1063, BNSF-944CW 5432, BNSF ES44C4 7134, and finally BNSF-944CW 5108. At 6:20 a.m., the southbound train was approaching the east switch at Chisholm Siding, traveling at 42 miles per hour. But then, there was something occurring, and that was trouble. The engineer began emergency braking about 500 feet before reaching the switch. The train entered Chisholm Siding, traveling around 40 miles per hour, and went 374 feet. And then, all of a sudden, trouble happens. The southbound train collides with the local at 6:45 a.m., traveling at 32 miles per hour. All 9 of the locomotives from the striking train derailed. 1077 began to leak fuel, which was red. But despite the crash, all 79 freight cars stayed on the track. The 2 locomotives and the first 3 cars of the local train derailed. The conductor of the southbound crew suffered serious injuries and was transported by helicopter to a hospital in Lubbock, Texas. But the engineer, 48-year-old Jesse Coburn, lost his life after jumping. His body was found on the right side of the train. Southwestern used track authority in the operation of its trains, but there was not any wayside signals to govern or protect the train's movement. Without signals, strict compliance within the track warrants and the associated operating rules provided only the protection between trains. The operating rules defined as this non-signal territory, also called dark territory. This was similar to a wreck that happened back in 2011, the Mineral Springs train collision, when an intermodal train rear-ended a Union Pacific freight train, and because of a dark signal. Southwestern's Callback subdivision consisted of a single track between milepost 0.0 in Clovis and the milepost 186 in Carlsbad. There were 11 sightings for the meeting or passing other trains over 186 miles. Freight traffic in the subdivision typically consisted 2 through freight trains and 2 local freight trains each day, with an additional through freight trains each week. But what was the cause of this wreck? What caused this all to happen? The NTSB launched out an investigation that the cause was the accident of the conductor of the Roswell local failed to return to the switch for the main track movement because he was fatigued, which means he was very tired. Contributing to the accident was that the striking train crew did not perceive the misaligned switch in a non-signal territory in time to avoid the collision. The conductor said he was tired while driving away from the work site, but had no difficulty staying awake. His shift further evidence indicates that the conductor to the engineers that he had given up the track authority, suggesting that at the time the conductor thought he had aligned the switch to the main track. NTSB has investigated many accidents across transportation modes where fatigue has caused or facilitated individuals to distend from task, make mistakes into judgments and actions, and lose awareness of work context and demands in a sense. A fatigued operator can fail to perform a task. In this accident, investigators identified that the conductor committed an error of omission along with indications that he had felt a little tired after his work shift. The conductor's failure to realign the switch and his subsequent misrepresentation of his work is consistent with fatigue-induced behavior. Therefore, the NTSB believes that the conductor's error of the omission was facilitated by fatigue. However, also, the 2 southbound crew members could have received minor injuries if they had stayed on board the train and braced for impact. This is a good example of the 2006 Cactus train collision when a BNSF coal train collided with a parked siding filled with freight cars, and the crew members received minor injuries despite the big damage on the locomotive leading. After the wreck, most of the locomotives were repaired. BNSF needed some repairs. 1063 needed some repairs to its nose, and it got what it needed, and it ended up returning with the BNSF swoosh logo. The only engine that was not repaired from this wreck was SD50 number 9851. Its nose and cab section were completely destroyed, and therefore the locomotive was sent away to be scrapped. It has been 8 years since this wreck had happened. Rest in peace to Jesse Coburn, who had died in this accident.